Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. We're back, baby, and better than ever.
Oh,
that's what I think.
Better than ever.
I think all of you are better than you've ever been.
Oh, thank you.
But we're not as good as we once were. Isn't that a country song?
Yeah.
I think it is. That is a country
I think you're
song.
Right. Yeah.
I ain't as good as I once was.
Yes,
right?
yes.
I'm sorry, I can't sing anymore or I will be in trouble.
I know them since we were kids at school.
That song.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Okay,
yeah.
Toby Keith.
Toby Keith, thank you. I was like, it's not John Anderson, it's Toby Keith. Thank you.
Well,
John Anderson,
very outside
man.
the box. First name. Toby Keith. Okay.
Very legit. Very legit.
Mm-hmm.
And we are all, along with Toby, welcoming you to another episode today. And we are first and foremost going to talk about not rodents, a marsupial, because possums are not rodents. And if you didn't know that, now you do. So Jessica, tell us about the marsupial.
And this does lead into the topic today.
Yes, this is on topic because we're going to talk about the state fair and the county fair process with like veggies and flowers and stuff today. But Ray and I just got back from working at the state fair and helping in this section called Cloverville, where all the little 4-Hers enter all their vegetable items. And there is this giant fake tree that is in Cloverville. And they put it in storage every year and it comes out. And this year there was a really cute stuffed animal possum on the top of it. And we're like, oh, look at that possum. How cute. Maybe they're going to do a nature display and children will learn about wildlife of Kentucky. Well, another 4-H agent decided to share with us the reason there was a possum up there is because the year before at State Fair, a possum had made the fake tree his home. But nobody knew that.
A real possum, yeah.
A real possum. And he came to the State Fair. Nobody knew he was in there. And then the next morning, people would come out and they would find vegetable displays that would have a bite out of them.
Man,
they would find other
that's
things
such a
on the
long
floor.
game.
Yeah, they would find like...
And they went on a hunt for the kids that were taking bites.
Oh.
Did they in fact do that?
They thought it was some like little punk messing with them and like throwing things on the floor every night until somebody finally saw the possum and then chased it out. And
honestly, dream come true. Like if I was that possum, that's where you want to be, is at the state fair, because deep fried Oreos. Hello.
Oh, I mean, possums and deep fried Oreos. We've just written a country song. It's going to be beautiful. But you should go to the state fair if you've never been. I had this conversation with folks just last week, and we've just given you the ultimate scavenger hunt. You go to a place at State Fair called Cloverville, which is all the 4-H exhibits, vegetables, and culinary delights and photography and all the other classes we're going to talk about today. But you need to go there in a scavenger hunt and find the possum. But Jessica, does that possum have a name? I didn't hear one that week.
I don't think so.
I just looked up and saw there was a stuff. It's not a real possum, folks. That's living in the tree now.
It's a very cute stuffed animal.
It's an homage.
It's a stuffed animal. Yes,
it's an homage to a real possum.
But it's a throwback, and I did not know that story until you told me that. So it all makes sense. I just randomly looked up and thought there'd always been a possum there. I just never noticed it. So that's good to know.
The real possum was like above our heads the entire time the year before without us knowing.
Yes.
So.
We could have had a bite taken out of us. Yeah. So
are you all possum fans? Do you all like possums?
I think they are interesting.
Maybe possums
I love
are
possums.
really
so
cute.
just in case anybody's thinking about throwing any shade.
Okay. I'm no shade to the possums.
I'm fine with them. Like they haven't done anything to me besides surprise me at times with their smile and
their winning personalities. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about possums on here before, and how many I find in my barn, but
I get like one once a year in my garage.
Mm-hmm.
Once a year, possum tries to move in.
The little ones
I feel like of all the native wild animals around here, a possum would be the one I would most likely have as a pet.
I could see that.
I think I would have a raccoon. I don't know why I prefer that over a possum. Raccoon seems to be more me.
That's my toxic trait. I would have a raccoon, and it would drive my husband insane.
I want wild animals as pets. That's my beige flag. Okay, like
you do want them that.
I want any wild animal as a pet. That's
I just imagined you with like the Beastmaster, like woo, like calling in.
I think that's a pink flag going to red, personally, Alexis. But that's just me.
Listen,
trending
wolf
red.
Wolf pups.
It's only red if you want it to be. It's beige for most
Fish and
people.
wildlife get involved.
If you're not chill, then that might be a red flag for you.
Yeah.
But if you are, then
But
I love
Lexus too.
possums. I think that they're awesome. I think that they're
awesome possum.
I think that they feel like a much chiller alternative to a raccoon.
Yeah.
I think a raccoon's just going to be like, it's almost like I feel like the possum would be like more like a dog and a raccoon would be more like a cat.
There you go.
And I'm just not overly a cat person.
I feel like a raccoon could probably, I mean, it's good with its little hands, and I feel like it could wield a knife. Yeah.
It could probably open drinks for you and stuff.
Yes, true.
Like help you in the kitchen.
I mean, you're just making the case
just
for me,
eat all the grapes,
Yeah.
just like putting all the grapes in its mouth.
Yeah. Just fill them up with grapes before you start cooking, and then they aren't going to be snacking at all.
You're going to be taking a nap. But
Well,
at the
that's
state
really
fair,
fun. I wish that I had
new.
seen the real possum.
I do too.
I wonder what what was it doing the whole? Because I assume it was there for a little while.
It was there at least a week before somebody found it. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
It was enjoying itself. It was eating the children's displays of produce.
It was found some bugs and stuff before then. In the dusty corners of the Kentucky Fair and Exposition Center. Man, what a life.
I will say, as someone who does not have children, I do still find Cloverville really fun to walk around. Because first of all, sometimes you see stuff and you're like, what? A kid did this? And sometimes it's, a little more obvious. And sometimes you're very surprised and shocked at their talent. But it is a really fun thing. I used to set up Cloverville, and I always like to walk around and see like the insect collections and the photography. So highly recommend.
Yeah, I was walking around. I mean, they were doing pre-setup when we were there. We were specifically working in the horticulture section of Cloverville, the horticulture agents that Jess mentioned. But I'd usually take a little bit of time just that day, even though there's not a lot going on. Just counties are starting to set up. There's like a walk of counties. All the counties are showcased kind of in the state, and lots of other food vendors setting up, and lots of like state police setting up, Corps of Engineers, different things. And it always amazes me all the things that go on at the Kentucky State Fair. And that was a conversation I was having with someone last week. And they said, oh, well, we're not really, we're not ag producers. So there's really probably not much for us at the State Fair. And I was like, but wait, you can get deep fried everything and go see stuffed possums. But there is a lot at the State Fair. Yes, lots of agrarian things and home economic things and youth project things. But there's so much going on there. It's almost like a giant community event. Yeah.
There's so much, right? Like as a kid growing up, like we always just saw the ag stuff. And it wasn't until I was a teenager and I went with a friend, they were like, hey, do you want to go do the rides? And I was like, rides? What do you mean there are rides?
Yeah.
And like there's a whole other side. So you don't even have to come there just to see ag things. But I'm going to encourage you to do that because there's a lot of cool ag stuff that is going on.
At least go see the honey and the wine.
Yeah.
Like, those are the two deliciously cool things.
And just, if you've never seen a cow before or a pig or sheep or that is your opportunity to see a really clean one. Right?
Yeah. Good point.
I had
a different experience as a child, so I'm going to out myself as not having come from any sort of agricultural background. I grew up in the first wave suburbs of Louisville, Kentucky, so not in what passes for Louisville now, which is like out in the middle of Oldham County, but inside Jefferson County, but suburban Louisville. And we would go to the state fair every single year, and my mom and my aunts would enter culinary things like cookies and canned goods, and also textiles like crocheted and knitted items. We also, my uncle was owned one of the last independent pet stores in Louisville, Kentucky, and specialized in both reptiles but also aquariums, fish. And so there's a whole aquarium set up with competitions, people entering tropical and saltwater fish. And so a couple of years actually we set up for his business, and then my cousin and I set up, did that individually, entered in that, and that was all well before I got indoctrinated into the cult of agriculture, putting the cult in agriculture,
the cult in horticulture.
Yeah, exactly. And I, we would still go and see the cows and walk through the different parts of the different wings of the fair. You walk through the east wing where you could like buy some on the DL, like switchblades and stuff back in those days. It was pretty
all
cool.
The things.
Yeah. They're like, technically it's not a switchblade, but it is.
Actually,
it's really a comb
kind of thing, and like cheap Power Rangers masks or something. I don't know what else we were into
and
back
seen
in those
on
days.
TV section.
Yes.
But even the connection to agriculture was, I didn't realize that was kind of the main original reason for a lot of the fair stuff until I was older and more initiated. So just to that
tenured.
point of the other thing we would do is we would go and get book covers for our textbooks from the like different armed forces displays. They would have like things with like fighter jets and like tanks.
They're still there.
And those things were expensive. So if you got them for free, that was a win.
They gave me that, and I'd say thank you for that.
Thank you for your service.
Army of One, or be all that you can be, I think it was back then.
Yeah, that was one of the booths I walked by, and they had a helicopter body out there. They had this really elaborate display, and I was like, man, I mean, they some of these booths at the state fair, whether it's a county booth, I think I walked by Harrison County, Cynthiana, Kentucky's booth, and it's just these booths could get very elaborate. So not only is it agrarian based, but it's like a lot of county fairs, even in that, it's a showcase of local communities in Kentucky. And I did some digging before the show today, just real quick, a scan. I was interested because I didn't grow up with the Kentucky State Fair. I grew up in the Eastern Foothills and never attended. I hate to admit it, but we were involved in, production agriculture, but never attended the state fair until much later in the, late 90s. So I didn't grow up with it. So I did a little bit of looking into it. And I didn't realize that the Kentucky State Fair is one of the oldest state fairs in the country, and it said in 1816 with a guy you might know the name of, Colonel Lewis Sanders, helped organize the first state fair in Fayette County, Kentucky. And I thought that was interesting. And it wasn't a single place. It used to move around, and it didn't kind of start to stay put in Louisville until later on. It became actually the state fair, I think, in 1902. I was reading the history of the state fair. So it kind of floated around between 1860 and 1902, moved around different locations, and became the official state fair through the General Assembly's Act in 1902. But it's an old state fair, and it's got a really interesting kind of background to it. And I would not have thought that about the Kentucky State Fair, because I know there's much larger fairs as you go west and even north, and Ohio and upper Midwestern states. They have these huge state fairs. That's not to say that Kentucky has a small state fair, but it's not one of the absolutely biggest ones. But it's interesting that we're one of the absolute oldest in the U.S. It's kind of a neat history.
I think what also makes ours unique is that I'm finding out now, because growing up and always going up there to the same location, most of it's indoors, right?
Yes.
Or almost all of it. And not
very unique.
Yeah. A couple years ago, I really realized, from like meeting so many people who've moved to Kentucky, now, and they're going to it, they're like shocked that it's all indoors. And I guess that's, unique and also kind of nice.
Air conditioning.
Yeah. Somebody texted me today and said, I'm freezing. Make sure that you, bring a jacket while you're up there walking around. But
yeah, and I was a couple years ago, we have a National Association of Agents, and went out to the Iowa State Fair, and I've always wanted to go out there, and it made me appreciate the Kentucky State Fair, because Iowa has a huge state fair, very well organized, very nice fair, but it was almost all outside. There were some air-conditioned halls, individual halls there, but for the most part, what is on the inside for Kentucky is on the outside for them, and it was a big difference. I enjoyed that fair very much, but it was not nearly as comfortable as far as walking around, because it was very hot that afternoon I went. And even though I enjoyed it, I was not as comfortable as I was in the nice buildings here in Kentucky. So there you go.
I just feel like you can't eat. I was just thinking, you can't eat your burger that has donuts for buns in the heat. It's not the same when you can eat it in the air conditioning.
You're gonna sweat either way, though. You're gonna
more
sweat
of an
either way.
immersive experience, in the outside.
Outside it's gonna melt all over you.
You
but
sit
inside,
in the sun until the burger, and everything becomes the same temperature.
All sort of
an alchemy. You're just going to all fuse together into this one alloy. Yes, you become one with the burger. Yes, that is the goal.
So here in August, we're doing the state fair, but it's not the only fair in towns across the state of Kentucky and other states. And I know one of the things that's really fun that I get, well, it's fun for me because I don't have to do as much, but like extension and extension agents and others are really heavily involved in these fairs, both the state fair and also at your own county level. Is there even anything smaller than the county fair sometimes, or is that the kind of initial?
There's different sizes of county fairs, but I think even in counties, when I was in the far eastern part of the state, I guess that's a great question. I never thought of it that way, Brett. But when I was in the far eastern part of the state, we didn't have county fairs per se. In a lot of counties, we had fall festivals, but they would have judging events because county fairs feed into it's good to understand that county fairs, in a lot of cases, feed into the state fair.
Mm-hmm.
And even those counties that did not have a county fair, they had judging events to judge. In our case, within our organization, 4-H and youth development projects and home economic projects, and I guess open adult projects, so on and so forth. Even if you didn't have a county fair, you had a way to get those judged, and the winners would be transferred on up at a later date to the Kentucky State Fair. So I guess that would, to answer your question, Brett, I guess that would be the situation where you can have something smaller than a county fair that feeds into the state fair, and that's no fair at all. But you have judging events that feed into it. I had never thought about that, Brett, but yeah.
Well, so there's just sort of this network of things, but I think the county fair is probably the typical.
Yes, that's a normal organizational unit. Yes.
When are your
fair's famous?
Well, I was going to say, I was like, one, I'm just going to own it. I guess I'm like crazy for an agent wise because I actually really enjoy county fair. It's like basically my entire month of July, but it's very rewarding for me to see how happy everyone is. Most of the time. But our fair is the longest continuously running fair in North America, in Mercer County.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
So we had a fair even during COVID. Basically, Extension put it on. We had Floral Hall still, which Floral Hall, when we say that, sometimes people are like, oh, that's just flowers and maybe produce, but that's quilts and art and home crafts and furnishings and culinary, honey, all sorts of things. But in 2020, we still had our Floral Hall and a few livestock shows, so we wouldn't give up that record that we have of being the continuously oldest running fair. However, I said that weird, but
so when
it's been going on a while.
How long? When is the county fair in Mercer County?
Ours is always the last full week of July.
Okay.
So we start prepping really in May, and then the whole month of July is dedicated to doing that, to getting everything set up, and then that full last week is there's something every single day. But we're unique. A lot of fairs offer premiums, so we do like our open floral hall. There's a premium with every ribbon color you get.
That's like the money that you get if you win.
Yep. And then they get best in show ribbons, and so that's like out of all the blue winners, who's the best out of a certain class, right? I say of all the vegetables, of all the blue ribbons, which one's going to be the best one?
Jessica, is that for both youth and like open adult? Is that the case for everybody?
Yeah. So 4-H is a little different. On a lot of things, as we know.
Sure.
But open, they judge. You have a blue, red, white, right? And not everyone has to get a ribbon. In 4-H, on that side of things, they can have multiple blues. So they could have like 4 plates of squash. They all look fantastic. They could give every kid a blue because they judge them against themselves. They do the Danish judging system. So you basically score it against what you would imagine like would be the perfect squash, right? Mm-hmm. But then only in 4-H, the best in shows are the ones that go to the state fair. In open, you can win best in show, and you could get a white ribbon or not a ribbon at all, and you could still enter in the state fair. Mm-hmm. You just have to pay their registration fees, and you can enter as well. And then I think they do, like, sometimes some county fairs are after the state fair deadline, and they'll make exceptions if somebody like sends a note in, most likely from your extension office, saying, hey, my county fair happened after the deadline, and then they let people still enter items in, like, at, last minute.
Yeah, see, we never competed in a county fair. We just submitted directly to the state fair.
Well, I was going to ask you that is what I've heard before, is that Jefferson County's, like, they consider that their county fair. The state fair is their county fair, right?
I never thought about
Straight
that.
to the big time, baby.
Right?
Cool. The big show.
Right to the top.
That's neat. That's interesting.
I entered baked goods once, and I met a lot of people from Jefferson County entering, and that's what they were kind of telling me. And it is wild taking stuff up there.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, because you have like these long lines, and people are mad, and if it's hot, sometimes the lines end up going outside a little bit, even though so your cake is melting as you're holding it or something. It's
a euphemism?
It's a high drama.
Cake is melting.
It's a high drama situation.
It was very intense. I was not. It is very intense.
And until I started working with the Extension Service and going actually to State Fair, I had no idea that it took hundreds and hundreds of volunteers judging and set up. Not only that, but tear down to make this whole huge process work. Now, that's not even counting the time of the full-time workers that are hired through, the Kentucky State Fair, not even counting their time, but it's just an incredible endeavor, an undertaking of something of that magnitude. I mean, there's just hundreds of volunteers to try to make that all run smoothly every year. And it is a sight to see. It really is. Didn't realize any of that until I started working in the State Fair many years ago in different judging areas. So it's fascinating what all it takes and goes into that. So that's pretty cool.
So I'll ask a pointed question that's not meant to be pointed, but I just can't help myself. What do you all see? What's the point of these fairs? Like, what's the point? Why?
Talking county fairs, or, well, I guess the state fair too.
Well, I know we can start with the county. We've given the state fair a lot of love so far.
Historically,
and Jessica said that there's enjoyment, and so
that's a big deal. I mean, the community, it's almost turned into originally just an informal gathering of farmers, both on a state and county level, from what I could read. The transfer of knowledge, one person to the other, and then showcasing, the best livestock or the best crop. So it had a very focused, functional background, and that's kind of the underpinnings of the fair. But now it's so much more than that on a county and state level. Now it's almost like a community come together and an economic generator, especially if you look at the economic impact, like of the state fair in the state and all the jobs that it provides for that time period, just the money that comes out of there. It's pretty incredible. But in the beginning, it was very much focused, I think, on agriculture and the transfer of knowledge. But it's become a lot more than that, really, since 1800s.
Yeah, I think definitely a community event. There are people that I see pretty much sometimes once a year at the county fair, right? And not only community, but then we've ended up, meeting a lot of new people who end up getting involved in other areas of extension or other parts of the community. And just people look forward to it all year, which is hard to, believe or say that. But we have a group of knit to crochet one ladies that meet every Tuesday. And Miss Betty Parrott entered 68 items and took home over $200 and something this past year. And so everybody loves Betty, but then everybody's also out to get Betty. They're I'm going to do it this year. I'm going to beat Betty's record, but nobody can beat Betty because she's already working on stuff for next year's fair.
Betty is unbeatable.
The week of the fair that's going on, right? And she takes all of her winnings and she buys more supplies with her winnings to make stuff for the following year. and then returns all of her ribbons.
Betty reinvests in Betty, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Best bet on Betty. Yeah. I mean, that's a
Betty's
that
betting
point
on
of
herself.
pride. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Betty
pride that
betting on
comes out of
Betty.
that.
I think it's
yeah. Go ahead, Alexis.
I was gonna say, I think it's an opportunity, like, for both youth and adult to just sort of showcase hard work they've done. So as someone who did like horse shows and stuff like that, you know, the fair was an opportunity to kind of show off your hard work and compete against people and see, you know, how you stand up against them and, you know, take some winning. Some of those kids use that for a college fund or something like that. So it's just like it's a nice opportunity to, you know, show off a little bit. And even if it's like, you know, if you've grown some nice corn, it doesn't necessarily have to be animals or, you know, like Miss Betty and making some cool stuff. I think there's something nice to be able to sort of show off a lot of that hard work because there's not a lot of ways to have that sort of stuff appreciated. And as someone who started dating her now husband at the county fair, there's also that. There's also a love match to be made. So
Wait.
Love match at the county and state fair.
Did you just out yourself as a horse girl?
Did. I think she did.
I'm honestly shocked you couldn't have guessed that.
I suspected, but I wanted to let it play out.
You had that. You were on the DL on that for many years.
Yeah. It's a past, but it's a past.
Whoa!
You need to own that. Well,
I mean, for some
no
reason,
one is shocked by that information.
Earlier we said Toby Keith, and then this made me think of the barbecue stain on my white T-shirt. I was imagining
Tim McGraw.
Tim McGraw.
I got it.
Yeah, on top of it.
Yeah, so some people just look forward to that.
Apparently, there's more to be learned at a county and state fair than just agricultural topics.
Yeah, there's also cooking at the state fair. We haven't talked about that. Like, there's like whole cooking demonstrations. I think they're like every day, and there's different. And they do. I know they did this year, like cut flower, like floral arranging demonstrations too.
A lot of educational stuff that they've gotten into over the years. Yeah,
Kentucky Department of Ag. I was just gonna be like KDA, Kentucky Department of Ag has a massith display, and they do like all the different associations, right, are there. So like, the corn growers, the soybean, there's like horticulture, there's the Kentucky State Beekeepers, there's all
the Kentucky Aquaculture Association, because we have one of those.
They're all up there with activities.
I was just telling my office, I'm so guilty that once we're done working the fair, that's usually for us, it's not so bad. It's 2 long days. You know, if you're
we're lucky.
The event. Yeah, I mean, some folks there's others in my office that are there all week this week, Monday through Friday. But I am guilty of when I'm done working there, I just bugger on off back to my county office. I need to go there just to look at everything. It's been a few years since I've done that. And when I do that, I'm always freshly blown away by all the stuff that you guys are talking about that's going on. And it seems like they add stuff every year, but I don't go just for fun much anymore, or, you know, to see, like, I need to go and see local folks that are participating for my county and, you know, showmanship events and things. But I don't do that as much as I should, because when you work it takes on a different kind of thing. But I need to do that. I said I would try, but it seems like I always have some reason or another that I don't make it up there. I need to go.
If you enter something, don't you get tickets? Like 2 tickets for free?
I don't know.
You have the opportunity to purchase tickets at a reduced rate.
Okay.
But you don't get free tickets.
Oh. Well, all I know is our office always had tickets, and we were like, we need
probably
tickets.
Through 4-H, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, then have
yet another perk of the county offices.
Yeah, they send a bunch for 4-H for all like the ham kids and stuff. That's something we didn't talk about. Country ham.
Somebody would talk about the ham and how much that brings every year in Kentucky.
There was like, I don't know how they haven't had that yet, right? But it's millions. Am I wrong when I say that?
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, so they declared the winner, and now they're going to turn around and sell it, I guess, tomorrow morning. I don't know, one of these mornings.
Yeah, for the big country ham
I saw a post from the KDA that they had declared the winner, but they have, like you said, they haven't sold it yet.
That's always a big part, kind of the lore and tradition of the state fair that I really don't know that much about, but the country ham auction and the whole process that goes into that. And there's lots of money involved in the auctioning of that thing off, typically with lots of corporate sponsors and things.
Yeah.
So
And I think along that same note, as far as the deep fried Oreos and pineapple whip and corn dogs get a lot of publicity, but there are actually, food trucks and other, I don't know what you would call them,
Kentucky
carts and
Proud
stuff where you can get, things from the Kentucky corn growers, Kentucky pork growers,
part of
Kentucky
the
chicken growers.
people.
There's sort of like a local food with more of an agricultural connection than some of the other local food things that we sometimes see in bigger cities or something like that. But yeah,
should we mention how big this year's largest pumpkin and watermelon are? Because I'm
shout out to
away.
Floyd County.
Pretty big.
So Floyd County, Dwight Sloan, shout out to you, had the largest pumpkin this year in 2024, and it was
a multi-year winner.
Yeah, it's 1,133 pounds.
It's crazy.
Awesome.
Daggone pumpkin. It was over 1,000 pounds.
And then a get Dwight on here.
I mean, I worked with him for many years, and that's its own that could be
a connection. Get him on here, right?
Dwight needs to be on here. He's an interesting guy. I remember driving up there many days to that little hollow where he grows these on the side of a hill. And the first time I drove up there, I was like, why does this guy have fans on this pumpkin? Like he would have multiple pumpkin vines and he had the shade cloth and fans. The giant pumpkin is fascinating to me because the people put so much work into that and so much care getting that thing to the state fair. But that's a great idea. Somebody needs to jot that
what county is he in?
Floyd.
Yeah. He's in Floyd County, so maybe we'll see. Maybe we can hook him up with get a mic out to the extension office, and we'll give him a little space to operate, and he can walk us through. Well, because I saw he had a shirt in the picture. He had a shirt on that said like the Kentucky Giant Pumpkin Squad or team or whatever.
They are their own unit. Yeah.
Is that what it's called? I don't think it's called the Squad.
No, I forget. It's a group of growers and they trade seeds and information and secret.
So he can hype them, get some new.
But really interesting guy, great guy.
It's an insane amount of space that you take up to grow like this one pumpkin. As far as I remember looking into it a couple years ago, and it's like, don't quote me on this, but it might be like a quarter acre for like a one pumpkin, and you're like tending the vines and moving stuff out.
Yeah.
Taking anything off that's not your king pumpkin.
Yep.
Well,
my husband's tried to do it a couple of years and it's not
you
worked
have to babysit the thing every day for an hour or two. You're babysitting the vines every day.
You have fans on it?
Oh,
Did not have fans on it. That's a new one. But now we're going to have this guy on here so we can learn these secrets.
So is that I'm like, is that like pushing air across the bottom of the leaves to like pull more nutrient up into the plants? Is it trying to get disease pressure down?
For that, it was disease pressure and relative humidity, which is real important for those giant vines. But there's a lot of other, I won't go much further, but injections and things. It goes pretty deep into the world of giant pumpkins.
You're juicing.
Yeah. No, the pumpkin's not injected, but the vines, the growing, they have a lot of little secret things they do that is part of the fun and the lore of the giant pumpkin growers. I mean,
wow.
But that's crazy. I mean, that was a big one this year. I saw the picture and it looked good. It looked kind of like a pumpkin, lopsided like the giant ones do, and that's pretty cool. But he definitely needs to tell us not all of his secrets, but some of his.
What do they do with that one afterwards? Right, because you see like online sometimes where they're
sometimes
like,
"Oh,
we made boats
fairs
out of them," or we did, What do they do with that giant pumpkin?
I know Dwight is entered in other fairs too, so I don't know if that's the same pumpkin. How that works?
He's making the circuit with it.
Other state fairs, yeah, but I don't know. I
have a friend whose dad would carve the giant pumpkins. I don't know if it was like the winner or not, but I think he got some of the giant pumpkins from the state fair and would carve them. So they're these huge, big faces and stuff like that.
Some of those end up in like Dollywood or like the Pumpkin Spectacular in Louisville. They end up at these prominent places on display later on, like our Kings Island that do these big displays.
They get paid by the weight, right?
Isn't
that right?
Do they?
Yeah, I saw the check was $1,133.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was. Yeah.
So cool. So cool. And just another fun thing about the state fair, folks.
Yeah, the watermelon, Alexis.
Yeah, the largest watermelon came from Meade County, Frank Mudd. And it was 233.2 pounds. 233-pound watermelon. And it's not even as big as last year's. Apparently last year's was 43 pounds heavier. So it was 276 pounds.
Holy cow.
My. That's a beefy pumpkin. I mean, a beefy watermelon.
I know. Just imagine.
Yeah.
Just
we talked about cucurbits a couple of episodes ago, and these are some cucurbits
and how
to
they can
remember.
be challenging to grow. And here's people growing these tremendously huge versions of it's amazing.
So I think maybe that's a good way to talk a little more nuts and bolts about entries and misconceptions and all that kind of stuff, because yes, there certainly is a spectacle to the largest pumpkin, the largest watermelon. But if you're entering into, for instance, the general category for zucchini, there is not a premium placed on or a high value placed on the giantest zucchini. In fact, there's a specific range that you're looking for in this much, much smaller, 4 to 6 inches long kind of range. And there's all kinds of standards. It's a really interesting component of a lot of these fairs. I mean, as we were talking earlier about, and I asked what was the point of these fairs. I think that it has, I've actually been reading stuff about not so much just county fairs, but this general concept of like agricultural judging and standards and things like that, and the way that interfaces with land grants over time and the role of cattle judging and stuff like that. But I think in the past it was a way, the county fairs were a way for these agriculturalists who spend a lot of their time isolated and alone out on the farm to come together and share ideas and promote ways of doing things better, and to maybe have some standards of judging. And then over time, the fair has become more about, as fewer and fewer people are in agriculture, it's important to communicate to those not in agriculture what exactly is going on out here. And these events kind of are a way to, in part, in addition to all the other things we talked about, ways to communicate about what agriculture is and what good agriculture means. But there still are, and have you all acted as judges in the fairs?
Sure, that's pretty common. Yeah.
What's the deal with that? I mean, there's standards for some things. In other cases, like it's like, oh, does this cookie taste good? It's like, yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I can't speak.
We've done that before, right, Alexis?
I have not done that. Kudos to you guys. Do you guys actually, when you judge like food products, do you taste them? I don't want to get us too far off Brett's topic, but do you taste them?
We did, but I don't think we knew any better, right?
Oh my goodness! I do not know as much about that.
Remembered.
We were kind of a last second judge because the judge didn't show, and of course, what did Alexis and I do when they said, "Hey, do you want to judge these cookies and fudge?" Well, sure.
Yes.
There's 32 fudge entries, and you're like,
I think afterwards we were like the little kid pointing to their stomachs, being like, "Oh,
we shouldn't do that anymore.
We shouldn't do that anymore."
You should have taken smaller bites.
On the vegetables side, when we're speaking to new judges or maybe younger agents that haven't started out judging, is it is interesting, kind of the quality that you judge on. Basically, it's not the biggest zucchini. It would be like, what would you purchase basically when you go to the store? What's the marketable representation of prime eating quality or something like that? And it's you also look for diseases and defects. And there's all of these rules in fair books that if you're making an entry as a youth or an adult, please, 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 one thing I could say is start early. You can't start really late and enter something if you've not grown it. If it's something like a crop like zucchini, tomatoes, green beans, things like that, it's stuff that you've grown. And once you do grow them up, pay attention. I mean, do you need 3 green beans on a plate? Do you need 10? Do you need 7? Pay attention to that. And then
within the entry book, it will say
within the entry book,
it's called the premium book.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Of whatever size. Pay attention to the actual standards of what you're expected to enter.
And a lot of times, a lot of counties will have like clinics. I've done it from time to time, not every year. But if somebody comes to me and say, what do judges in general look for? I am more than happy to say, if it's a green bean, we look for this. Or if it's a tomato, we look for this. And go over with people what makes a good entry. And sometimes we have more formalized classes. Jessica, do you guys have anything like that at your fair? Like working with either kids or adults? Or we don't do it every year. It's every now and again we do that based on demand.
Yeah, we actually had talked about that. We're going to do something like that before this next fair, going over certain entries, like ones that we noticed where people continuously keep, putting in the wrong,
yes,
put something in the wrong class or whatever.
Judge,
But we definitely have gone over that before of like 12 green beans per plate, right?
Yeah.
One zucchini per plate, and we make sure to put in our catalog like actual size, like inches that we're looking for, just because over the years, as as Brett already mentioned, we've had a lot of people who've come in and they've brought gigantic zucchini and they're like, I'm gonna win for sure. And then this little tiny one, like you said, you find at the store, wins. And they're like, I don't understand. Mine's like quadruple the size.
Largest
right?
zucchini. It was
Yeah.
best zucchini.
It's like a cucumber. The biggest is not the best in the garden. In fact, I've grown, and I'm disappointed when I find that 14-inch cucumber in the garden because it's not good for much. But we kind of judge based on that same theory of the biggest is not best, unless you have a biggest tomato contest. Some county fairs have specialty contests like that, and then you can enter your gigantic beefsteak tomato, as long as, usually we'll always say, as long as it's sound. But yeah, there's all of these rules in the fair books, and a lot of fair books have gone online. Bourbon County has recently went all online. You can find all that information either in print or online, and it's more common nowadays to find that more and more, just online only. So check it out. If you're going to enter in the county fair as either an adult or youth, kind of pay attention to the details. We disqualify a lot, and that's kind of a shame, that come in and it's not the right entry based on the details in the book. So
just read.
Yeah.
Reading's a big part of it.
Yeah. All the instructions are right there. Just, everything you need to know, read the catalog.
And then some categories are a little bit different. I know, like Jessica, I did not judge this section at Cloverville Horticulture, but some sections, like we had some entries this year that had to be disqualified, like in dish gardens that didn't meet all the criteria. Some of these categories are really super specific. So you really have to dig down, especially on a state level, to make sure that you're matching up all the requirements. And I know that's a big deal every single year in events like photography. What's a landscape versus a specimen? And some of these things can get kind of nitpicky. And if you're hung up on the details and can't get any clarification, call your extension office, and you will probably, on some of these things, talk first to the 4-H agent if they're available, to get some clarification on a state and county level. Some of these things are really easy to get disqualified in, these events that you put a lot of work into, like dish gardens or photography or events like that. So it's best to pay attention to those, the fine print. The
and don't bring rotten things. That should go without saying, but don't.
Hey, that's a good, Alexis, that's a great point, and we had this question I hadn't thought about a couple years ago. They're like, well, and we have our fair usually the last week of June, somewhere's in there. And they're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to preserve this tomato? So Jessica, you have any comments on that? As far as you're not bringing the thing that you showed in some
cases. Yeah, if your fair was really early in the season,
that's
you're gonna try to grow another tomato, basically, that you're going to bring in. We had to, in Cloverville, remove the cabbage class, because what people were doing was taking cabbages and freezing them, and then they would bring them up there to be judged, and we would watch them literally disintegrate in less than 24 hours, like melt. So that is no longer an option for people to make cabbages anymore.
And rotten cabbage smells almost as bad as rotten potatoes. I mean, it's
especially bad. Frozen and thawed. It reminds me like the smell of like a fall cabbage field where you're unable to get everything out. You just leave it there to go back.
It smells
people
up
do
the whole community.
Mustard as a cover crop, and then oh god, I feel like we're dying here, or like a daikon radish. Like a daikon radish cover crop, and let it rot in the ground and create some pores, and
so there's some things now that we have removed from the you can't enter those any longer. Same thing, I think we did, they used to have it like they would say enter cantaloupes, but like sliced open, right? And so now we've just switched that to like you can enter them, but please don't slice them in half.
Well, and there's aspects too, because part of what we're talking about is the idea of the lag. Like, it's not like you drop your thing off. Like in the case of the state fair, after you drop your thing off, it's sitting there for maybe a day or two before the judge gets to it, and then the judge takes a look at it, and then it's going to sit there for theoretically 12 more days. And so that little blemish that maybe doesn't cause a problem when you pull it off the plant, bring it in your house for 3 days, and then eat the thing, by the time the judge gets to it, it's like, it was fine when I left. Sometimes people aren't necessarily bringing a actively rotten thing, but within 2 days at room temperature, it becomes
You're basically setting up an incubation chamber, because it's pretty common to get things in Ziploc bags. So warm, moist environment, and we see tomatoes right before our eyes develop disease, fungal and bacterial diseases right on the tomato, and get soft spots in the period of a day and a half. And but that's a great point, Brett. We see that a lot. Yeah.
We've made the joke that sometimes when the sweet corn is entered that way, and a lot of the times with Cloverville stuff, it's kids are dropping them off at their county office, and then the agent is agents bringing them up. So they've already been at the county office for a day or two, and then it takes another day to get up here. But we've joked that the sweet corn, sometimes it's like already fermenting into silage time we get like the bags open.
It is literally, it does a lot of heat in it, and it's starting to sour. Yeah.
I'm mostly referring to the couple times I judged, and we would have terrariums or dish gardens come in that were just like basically aquariums, and it's just like, this isn't right. Like, who did this?
We also encourage to enter live plants. We had a dish garden this year that came in, and from a distance you were like, wow, that's impressive.
Really nice.
And then as we got closer, we were like, wow, that's
there's
plastic?
No living plant in there.
And then don't worry, Ray there was standing right next to me, and he reached his hand down in that jar and he poked it, and he said, nope, not pokey.
Nope, plastic. Yeah, I was like, this is too perfect. It's too perfect.
All the plants were fake in the whole thing.
So it's easy. I mean, it was a beautiful display,
beautiful,
but it doesn't adhere to all of the rules that were in the State Fair handbook. So there you go. Once again, details.
So let's just say, so right now we're at the point where everybody's thinking, oh, this fair thing is actually really cool, and I have a garden, or I like to bake, or I like to, knit or crochet or something, and maybe next year I'll think about getting involved in this. So as far as at the county level, what's the process for getting involved? When should people be thinking about it? When should we maybe send up a flare as horticulture podcast co-hosts to our audiences to say, in 2025, be thinking about your fair entries
sooner rather than later? And if you're growing things, probably around February, so that you can start to pick cultivars for your garden and start to think about that. Call the extension office. I mean, some of the stuff you don't have to go that far ahead on, but it's better to go early than late, because if you call in too late and it turns out you have to grow something and it be in the container bucket garden for a certain amount of time, I mean, there's nothing you can do if you don't get ahead of that time scale. So I would say, I don't know, I know our 4-H agent starts working with the kids, and I've done specialty classes January and February, like how to put together a dish garden or how to do that months ahead of the county and state fair.
I'd say call your extension office now and just say, hey, when is your fair? So you can get it on your calendar.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them can probably tell you, well, this is when our fair is. This is when our catalog is, normally released if there's been any changes to it. But I agree with Ray. Like, if you think you're going to, do something, or ask for the previous year's catalog and be like, can I have an old one just to get an idea of,
the catalog shows you like different types of broad categories, and then the specific subcategories that are available to enter. Is that right? Yeah. And that they have one of those for the state fair as well, that you can kind of look through, and it'll give you, it doesn't necessarily, Jessica's might be different, but it doesn't necessarily tell you like what the standards are by which the thing will be judged, but that can be found elsewhere. It's more like this type of bean in this number on a plain white plate is like that. That's like the type of, basic information it gives you. But start thinking about it now, and then ballparking. When is it usual that the catalogs come out? Is it sometime in like the spring, or?
It's usually at least it's several weeks before county fairs. Some counties get them out a little bit ahead of time. Ours is usually out 3 to 4 weeks beforehand.
Ours is now out by the 1st of May.
Oh, wow.
We have an online registration system, and that opens July 1st for like 3 weeks for people to register their items. So we get it out pretty early. We're actually next week have a county fair follow-up meeting for people who have any suggestions on changes or things that worked or things that didn't work for next year's fair.
That's great. There's no Ban Betty coalition forming, is there?
No, Betty's wonderful.
Okay, well, that's good. I just didn't know if we needed to go out.
She's like 92, and she's just like killing it. She's like rocking it out.
The t-shirts say Betty is the best. So, yeah.
Bet on Betty.
Betty. Sounds like it's a good bet to make.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of like, oh, can I see the one from last year? And you can kind of get a sense of what it looks like. And I think overall, sometimes people get a little nervous about the process. It's overall pretty simple process to get involved. And maybe the first year you figure out what it looks like, and you'll learn like, oh, I really should have, waited to pick, or I should have kept these in the fridge longer. Or I should have done whatever, any number of things. But I really enjoyed the times that I was involved with the fair, and I've loved to learn more about just how involved like the extension at the county level and state level both are in this. Is really I don't know. It's a fun thing that feels connected back to this like historical agricultural legacy in Kentucky, and it feels like small in a way. Like it feels like the small networked communities coming together to make something big is a really cool part of it for me.
It's good stuff. Even if you're not involved in agriculture, you can go and either learn about agriculture, eat a giant corn dog, or just ride a carnival ride or listen to some good music, depending on where you're at. So, and that was a conversation I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast episode here today is I was having a conversation with friends, and I told the person, if you've never been involved in agriculture, go anyways. It is both on a county and state level, it's a community event, and it's a good, especially on a state level, a good time to learn about other communities around the state, as well as all the agriculture, animal and livestock, exhibits and crop exhibits and things like that. So you don't have to be involved directly in agriculture or even have a entry that you've made to really have a good time at the fair. So
good old fashioned family fun, like. Really though,
you were ready with that.
Really,
you were ready.
Really though, really old-fashioned family fun.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, yes, we hope you go check out your fair wherever you are located, and maybe check out your county fair if you're in Kentucky, or wherever you are, whatever style of fair that they do. But and if you want to get involved, the easiest route to go, as someone who from experience has had to ask, contact your county agent, and they will get you on the right track. It's usually something pretty easy for them to answer, and they would love to have you, because the more entries in county fair, the more fun it usually is to see all the great things happening in the county. But if you have any questions about that, or maybe you're like, why didn't my giant zucchini win, or how do I grow better zucchini, you can always shoot us an email. That's horticulturepodcast@l.uky.edu. You can also find us on Instagram at Horticulture Podcast. You can leave us a review and tell us that you won blue at the state fair or the county fair, or maybe just that you entered, or what your favorite thing you ate at the fair was. All of those would be wonderful. If you would like to do that, we would appreciate it. It helps other people find us. And I think that's all we've got for you today. So we hope as we grow this podcast, you will grow with us, and that you'll join us next time. Have a good one.